The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Robert Rosenthal, and I am your host on episode number 10 of All You Can Eat, coming to you live. I love being live. There's nothing better than being live. It is 8 o'clock, 8:04 here on the East Coast. I am coming to you from New York City on the 25th day of April, 2018. Excited to be here and spending an hour talking about, well, you know, a favorite subject for so many of us, the subject of what it is that we're going to eat. And I am delighted to report to you that this week I have a guest on standby, Ivy Manning from Portland, Oregon. We have much to talk about with Ivy because we have a lot in common. And we're going to get to Ivy in a second. Before we do, let's see. Here's what's new. I just spent the weekend in Los Angeles, California, on the other coast, and shout out to Los Angeles. Always happy to be there. And I have to say that it turns out that people talk about April in Paris. And I got to say that late April in Los Angeles, for me, has historically been quite delightful. Temperatures in the 80s, sunny skies, blue skies. I mean, it was just glorious out there. I was out for a wedding of my cousin. Not one of those destination weddings that people are doing these days, because my cousin actually and her now husband live in Los Angeles, but it was great to be out there. And I would just like to report on one thing. It was a weekend of an awful lot of eating and drinking, because there was a Friday night event, then there was the Saturday night wedding overlooking the Pacific Ocean. That was quite stunning. There was a Sunday brunch. This is what happens at these kind of away weddings. They're like a 3-day event. I would like to point out one thing about the food at the wedding, which was good. There was a particular standout dish. I'm reporting this to people who like food. You know, you go to the wedding, and I've always made fun of kind of, well, pigs in blankets. Not that everybody doesn't love them. We all do. It's just that my sister-in-law, it will always be making pigs in blankets, and I said to her once, and they're lovely. It's and the way she made them was like really, I don't know how else to put it. It's like super white trashy, fantastic. She would take like a hot dog and wrap it in the frozen Pillsbury dough, literally 2 ingredients, and serve pigs in blankets. And I have to tell you, I'm not elitist in this way. I will tell you that any wedding that I've ever been to, you will literally run over the bride to get to the pigs in blankets. But I explained to my sister-in-law that there was a way to play it the way I do. As someone who went to cooking school, I just would serve it and call it saucisson en croûte. But the highlight of the wedding, I always find, by the way, that that pre kind of sit down, that when they're doing the cocktails and the hors d'oeuvres can sometimes be the absolute best food at the wedding. And I was not disappointed here. They moved quickly with some kind of vegetarian spring rolls. Lovely. There was a station set up where you could do your own beefy kind of, taco. And there was a sushi guy making sushi, which was lovely, including eel. That was impressive. But they were passing around an appetizer while I was waiting for my gin martini. They were passing around an appetizer that was a duck cone. They called it a duck confit, kind of a dumpling. No, a pot sticker, and it wasn't a pot sticker because pot stickers can be a little bit dumpling-like, where they're soft and kind of, slightly gummy, not in a bad way. But there was duck confit inside, more of a triangular. It almost had the appearance of kind of like an empanada, and the pastry was a little bit flaky and bakey. I could have been happy having that and gin martinis all night long. Anyway, Los Angeles, here's to you. Beautiful in April. And by the way, before I even introduce you, Ivy Manning, I will say that I will remind you that when we met out there at the International Association of Culinary Professional meeting, this is some years ago, it happened to have been April in Los Angeles, and it was, I remember it being, also super crisp, beautiful, and clean and beautiful. Happy to be in Los Angeles. And glad to be back home here on the East Coast in New York. As I said to you, on the 25th day of April, this is episode number 10. Boy, that goes quickly. And we've had some solo efforts. We've had some guests along the way. We have some more guests coming. But tonight I'm excited because I have my friend Ivy Manning. And Ivy Manning is what I like to call the real deal, by which I mean that coming to us tonight from Portland, Oregon, which I want to talk about with her because I believe that it's one of the great food cities in the United States of America. And again, we're coming off last week where I had an hour with Joe DiStefano, who is from Queens and is really the maven of Queens, New York ethnic cuisine. Queens being easily the most diverse ethnic cultural city in the United States of America, arguably the world. Well over 100 languages spoken, 85 different cuisines in that one little borough. But Ivy Manning this week in Portland, Oregon, easily also, and I'm not going to put a number against it, but if you think about the great food cities in America, Portland will always show up somewhere near the very top. So I want to talk to her about that. Ivy is also a cookbook author. Now, I would like to just say that I can identify with that because I too am a cookbook author, and I will take just a slight minute to do a little self-promotion because Mother's Day is coming, and even though my own book is called Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free, I have said before, and I will say again, the primary beneficiaries of the book Short Order Dad are women and families and children, because any time that you can get the guide to do more cooking at home, those who kind of benefit from it, assuming they read the book, are the women and the children. But the point I want to make is not so much about my own book, but that I know how much effort it takes to write a cookbook. In my case, it sat somewhere for 8 years, but even so, I would say if I had to gather up all the time that it took to bang out one book, you got to figure it's a year, it's 2 years, it's 2.5 years. It's a lot of work. Ivy Manning has written 8 cookbooks, 8, ladies and gentlemen. And in addition to doing that, she's also a food writer. I'm going to tell you exactly where she writes about food. But of the 8 cookbooks, you have Instant Pot Italian. Now, I know that's one of the more recent ones, and people are crazed about Instant Pot, so I'm really dying to talk to you about that, Ivy. She has easy soups from scratch with quick breads to match. She does Williams-Sonoma's Weeknight Vegetarian. That's another book. Her writing appears also, in addition to the books, catch Ivy's writing in food magazines, Cooking Light, Clean Eating, Food and Wine. And like me, she's an avid traveler, and not like me, is a passionate rescuer of sighthounds. So if we have time, Ivy, you're going to tell me a little bit about the dogs in your life. And because you folks are going to want to maybe learn more about Ivy or follow her, you can catch her on her website. This is ivymanning.com, ivymanning.com. And Ivy, like me, has a website, which is not a blog. Like, we literally will use it so you go, here's what you need to know about where we are, what we're doing, what we've written. And in her case, she's written a lot more. So ivymanning.com. And her Instagram is Ivy_Manning. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Ivy Manning. Ivy, how are you, my friend?
Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good, all things considered. I have really nothing to complain about, and no joke, I'm thrilled to be on the phone with you because it turns out that we have just a ton of stuff to talk about.
We do.
But one of which is that you grew up in Wisconsin. Am I correct?
I did.
What part of Wisconsin, Ivy?
I grew up in a small town about an hour north of Milwaukee and about an hour and a half south of Green Bay called Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow, Sheboygan, yeah, with the brats are famous. And hey,
it's the horse capital of the world.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what I want to ask you. So the first question, because I'm a huge kind of believer in the idea that all of our kind of, most significant food memories or connection to food starts early in our life. What did you eat growing up? Who was cooking and what did you eat?
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Sorry, I didn't mean for it to be sad. It just seems so obvious, basic to me, but go ahead.
Lots of cheese.
Fine.
Bratwurst. Very fond memories of the bratwurst was it's an every weekend sort of thing with the charcoal grill, and it was, my dad would cook, so it would take hours to go to the right store for the right rolls and a different store for the sausages, and it was a real social thing for him. We ate fish out of Lake Michigan, and that's probably why I glow in the dark.
Why? What kind of fish are we talking about?
Well, they have coho salmon there. They have a coho derby every year. We would eat smoked salmon. And then Friday nights are perch fish fry. So that's lake perch, which is the best fish fry fish. They're small and really delicious and full of collagen. So, I certainly didn't have a Queens upbringing as far as being aware of different cultures in Sheboygan. But at a very early age, I figured out I wanted to do food. So traveled and subsequently moved away so I could get, more interesting restaurants like Portland, Oregon, for instance.
Well, I mean, just for what it's worth, I want you to know that the Queens phenomenon is contemporary. In other words, when I was in Queens, you would eat pizza. You could have deli, but it wasn't what it is now. Your upbringing doesn't sound sad at all. It sounds like your dad was interested in not just kind of what was readily available, but what was good, what was the best. I mean, like if you're going out and shopping, a certain place for rolls and a certain place for your, for your brats, you're paying attention to what matters.
Right. Well, and I had, I shouldn't disparage too much. My Polish grandparents had a garden and cooked incredible meals, and everything was from scratch. And then the next door neighbors in Kenosha, they lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin. That was back, that town was full of Italians and Poles because the American Motor Company, which made the beautiful Gremlin car, if you look up,
Right.
70s cars, it was the best of the best. Simply the ugliest car ever made. Anyway, that was all auto workers. So we had Italian next door neighbors. So, ravioli one night and pierogi the next is what I like to say. So it wasn't too bleak, actually.
And I think, at what point did you recognize that food was important to you?
Really early on. I just followed my grandmother around, and she would give me a little piece of dough to play with before my eyes couldn't even reach the countertop yet. And I made clay food for my dollhouse. I was pretty obsessed really early on.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
I was a weird kid.
And are you a Green Bay Packer fan to this day?
Yes, rabidly.
Right. And
the games are at weird times here, so they start at 10:30 in the morning here. So I have to stand in line at 9:45 in the morning to get into Cerveza, which is a Packer bar here in Portland.
That's actually pretty funny if you think about it. I mean, it's funny in this way is that you have to get up very early because there is a Packer bar in Portland, Oregon, where you are going to watch the Packers play. I love that.
And drink Belgian beer, and it's like family. It feels like family. All those people I've known for years. We're all transplants.
Did you say Belgian beer?
Oh yeah, Cerveza is an incredible little brew house that has beers from all over the world.
And are they serving? I mean, do they serve brats, or is that just in my head?
They do serve brats and pasties.
Oh, that's cool.
Do you know what a pasty is, Rob?
It's like well, I shouldn't really guess, but it's like like I want to say like a meat-filled pastry type of thing, no?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's so much for my guess. Now, Ivy. So you grow up in Sheboygan, and then you find yourself going to the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Yes.
And I will hasten to point out that you study English at that school, and I want you to know this because I've said it over and over again, including to my very own daughters, one of whom graduated from there and one of whom is there now. So I spend plenty of time in Madison. I want to talk to you about Madison. But I've said to both of them, if you're going to go into any type of business that involves communication, whether it be speaking or writing, there is no better subject to major in than English. And you are an English major.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really good education, and just about anything you set your mind to as far as work goes. When are you not going to be able to write? When is writing a complete and well executed sentence not important?
Well, and I'm going to go even a step further. I just culturally, there's a lot of bad communication going on, starting at the top, and there's a lot of crappy writing, and there's a lot of people that have no clue how to communicate. Anyway, I'm throwing English in just because I know that you were an English major, and it matters because you end up in a career that combines both your love of food and your course of study.
Yeah, I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, well, how many people are lucky enough to be able to say that?
Not many. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think many. You kind of you fall into something. I was kind of wondering, like, how do gutter salesmen end up in that field? Or it just seems like so random how people end up in their careers. But no, I wanted to write cookbooks. It's exactly what I wanted to do.
Unbelievable that worked out that way. But let's talk a little bit about Madison. I think two things for people who don't know. Madison, Wisconsin is one of those places that you would describe as kind of like an oasis of blue in an otherwise sea of red. But apart from that, I'm more interested because I never deal with politics in all you can eat. I'm more interested in that the farmers market there on Saturday mornings is easily one of the best in the country. Would you concur?
Totally, yeah, I would. I mean, people come from really quite far. They'll drive several hours just to go to the farmer's market there. And, when you consider that Madison is in the middle of a prairie, I mean, it's a farmer's market and a bread basket. Or a cheese basket, depending on how you want to look at it. But, so those farmers aren't going very far to get to that market.
Yeah.
But the people are. They're coming from very far away to get the best food.
I love going to that market over there. I really do. And because it is spectacular. And it oftentimes does start off with, grabbing that hot cheesy bread off that truck, as you you walk all the way around the Capitol, a lovely looking, Capitol building. And I also, Ivy, would point out, and again, I'm there kind of relatively frequently. I'm basically there one semester, and I got 5 years in and 3 to go. And the food scene in Madison, like in many cities around the country, has become exciting. Like I know, it's weird for me because I like the old kind of classics. So while you can go to contemporary places and find some dudes that are like, James Beard kind of nominees, I only for the first time, after having been going for 4 years, only for the first time went to that Mickey's Dairy Barn.
Oh yeah.
And like literally like the last trip that I was there, and I had I wasn't even hungover, but I had the the corned beef hash, and it was the best I've ever had.
Mickey's Dairy Bar is where my parents had their second date.
Look at that. It's fantastic. And also, by the way, again, if somebody said to me, like, where should I go when I go to Madison? The first place that comes to mind, I should have actually done a little bit of homework, but you're going to know where I'm talking about. It's the the bakery. It's the bakery over there where they have those apple fritters. Oh my God, that place is just. All right, I'm not going to click any buttons, but there is a bakery there that does, donuts, but they have apple fritters. It's right by the campus. All right, that's neither here nor there. I love Madison. Do you get to go back at all to that part of the world?
Well, I certainly go back home to Sheboygan, which is actually a really beautiful little town on Lake Michigan,
right?
Quite frequently. And there's some great food there, believe it or not. There's little pockets of it. And I go back to Madison every once in a while. I still have friends there. If you need that gin martini,
yeah,
right there on the square where the farmer's market is, you need to go to Jenna's Bar on the corner there. It's like kind of like a little Flatiron building, so It's like the corner part of that building. And if you go upstairs and look behind some of the couch cushions, you might find part of my liver.
Okay. Well, I
think I lost it there.
I'm not going to be looking for your liver per se, but the gin martini is intriguing to me, and it reminds me of the next time I show up there. I mean,
it's the best bar that's not a college bar.
Madison. and that's cool too. I mean, I've done both. Like if the game is going on and I'm not at the game, you'll go to one of the, you go to the KK or anyway. But I'm happy to. When next time I go, I'm going to be getting in touch with you. You'll remind me about Jenna's, not because I'm looking for your liver, but I'm always intrigued by the idea of a gin martini. Now,
happy days.
Yeah, I can certainly understand. Yeah, no, I that farmers market is extraordinary, and Madison is great. But looking at your background, I kind of did not know that you had spent some time after having gone to culinary school in Portland, by the way, that you had spent some time not only working in restaurants over in that part of the world, in Portland, but you also did some stage, some kind of apprenticeships in Italy and in China and in Thailand. Am I correct about that?
Not China, but the other two, yes.
Okay.
I did truffle season in Piedmont, Italy.
Wow, nice.
Where all the truffle is from. And I've done cooking school stages in Thailand as well, in Chiang Mai. But not China yet. No, that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you on that. Me too. And you're, do you have those? I know that you've written a lot of books, which we're going to talk about, but have you incorporated, has your Barbaresco Italy and your Chiang Mai Thailand, have those things kind of informed your cookbook, your cooking and your cookbooks?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've lived in Italy before in college and then gone back for stages, and that informed greatly my Instant Pot Italian book. It's got a lot of regional cuisine in it, and I don't think people necessarily really understand. Well, they're starting to. There's a lot to Italian food. It's not just one kind of food. There's regional differences, and then city to city, really exciting things, and the history behind that, and kind of go into that a little bit. Although it's an Instant Pot book, it's really about, getting dinner on the table fast.
Do you, have you ever, this is just more of a game show question, but if you had to choose like a country to spend the rest of your life just simply based on the cuisine, what country would it be?
Japan.
It's unbelievable that you've said that, and I could not agree more, because it seems so easy to say Italy, and nobody can argue with France, and you could easily make a nice case for Singapore, and I tell people Japan. How come for you?
It's a really clean food, and I think it's very similar to Italian food in that the philosophy is very much that you use the best ingredients and let them speak for themselves.
Yeah.
The difference then between the two would be that one's a little bit more wheat-based, and one's more fish and rice-based. And I drink sake, so I'm a passionate sake drinker. So the nuances of the different strains of rice and how the sake is aged or not aged. And then the food seems to be just so delicate and interesting to me. When we go to Japan, there isn't a day that I need off, where I want just something from home.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason for that, I think, just to add to the story there, is because when people think about Japan, kind of by definition, there's certain assumptions in terms of what it is that you're eating. And that's where it goes wrong, because the truth of the matter is that there's 7, 8, 9, 10 different, like cuisines. I mean, sure, you can go to one place that does sushi, and then you go to an entirely different place that's doing the teppanyaki, and then you go to another place that's simply doing the skewering. I went to a restaurant that served nothing else but eel. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so that's what made it fascinating for me, is that they have so many tempura. You know what I mean? It's like there was so many different types of cuisine in that one place that you would never really get bored from one day to the next, because you would always have some variety.
Well, and they're not masters of none. I mean, they do one thing and they do it perfectly. Yeah. Whereas, in the United States, just today, I passed a restaurant that said Thai and sushi.
I hate that.
Boy, that's a recipe for disaster.
It's a total.
You might put the words "train wreck" on the side of the.
Yeah, it's a total. It's a total pet peeve of mine. It is. It's these places that, and you see them all the time, and people don't. I mean, look, people really don't know any better, but it's a total pet peeve of mine. Give me one type of food, don't mix three. Chinese and sushi, they don't go together just because you can say that the people that are making it are Asian. It's a total pet peeve, and But
that would be like saying, our restaurant makes falafel and paella because they're Mediterranean, and it's all the same.
Right.
It just, and I know that they're shooting for, a quick lunch crowd or whatever, but it just, to me, it's just a warning sign.
I totally agree with you. I'm never happy at those places that try to do too many things rather than one thing well. I will say this to you, though, Ivy. I'm glad to hear about your fandom, if you will, of sake, because I feel the same way, too. In fact, I think it was yesterday that I published a restaurant review of a place here in New York, in the theater district, a restaurant called Sushi Seki, and I had gone in for a complete kind of tasting menu that was paired with sake, and two things occurred to me. For people who think, for example, that a wine list can be intimidating and hard to decipher, imagine that same wine list in all Japanese characters. Do you know what I mean? It's like, really, come on, you guys are just joking with me already. Just bring me whatever. That said, because we went in for the pairing, and it was 7 courses. So I think we should talk about the impact of 7 sakis. But the third one that they served was so brilliant to me, was so smooth, was so tasty that literally my wife looked at me and she goes, "This sake right here, I could serve with dinner instead of a bottle of white wine."
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a very, very food friendly brew. It's made in a similar way to beer, but with rice instead. But the difference is that it has koji in it, which is a kind of mold that converts the starches in rice to sugar, so that it can then be made out of alcohol. With the koji, it doesn't just do that; it actually adds a lot of flavor, a lot of umami. So there are sakes that are really koji forward. If you like that kind of funky, a little bit funky mushroom savory quality to your sakes, and that's really what we go for when we're pairing with food, especially meats and anything, like a big eye tuna, something meatier. Eel is another good with a koji forward sake. And if you ask for one of those, even if it's all Japanese characters, you can ask for a koji forward one, and you're kind of faking it until you make it. It'll make you sound like you really know what you're doing, and then they'll bring you something that'll be great with food, bigger dishes, mushrooms, and.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and God, that was good. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you drink also the soju from the?
I'm not as much into that, as I don't get the flavor nuances, and mainly that's because it's quite strong.
Right.
So I'm a big whiskey drinker anyway. So soju is kind of out of my league. My husband will enjoy one occasionally before dinner, but it's not something I've gotten into. And it's kind of like scotch in that it's like it gets really expensive really fast. And if you don't like it anyway, it's sort of wasted on me, I guess.
I don't know. What I want to use this as a segue into kind of Korean food, but then specifically what's happening in terms of Portland, restaurants. And I'm bringing it up for this reason because we have a Koreatown here in New York. And not only am I a huge fan of Korean food in general, but I find it probably at this point in America to be the fastest growing kind of cuisine, trending. I went to this place recently. I met a friend. I ordered soju. He had it, and I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "It's like sake mixed with vodka." Right. So, I mean, it does have that kind of strength to it. Are you finding in Portland, has Korean food kind of integrated itself yet?
Yeah, it definitely has. There's a cool dude that started as a food truck. He has a truck that's sort of irreverently named Kim Jong Grillin'.
Oh, right. Yes.
And he's got, I think, 4 or 5 trucks and a brick and mortar now. And he's doing really creative things. So it's based on bulgogi, so grilled meats, but then he puts them in tacos and quesadillas with kimchi. He's kind of doing I hate the word fusion, but he really is making it hip and young and fun and rock and roll. It's a very rock and roll place. I mean, I think it's a 1 tattoo minimum to get in.
That's good.
But it's super delicious. So there's that, and then there is a Korean community here, and there's definitely old standby restaurants that we go to quite often. And then there's also really great product being made. I did a story for Sunset Magazine about how to make kimchi with Mrs. Choi, who has Choi's Kimchi, and she makes it by hand to this day, and she's in her 70s. And I go through about a jar of it a week.
Wow. How come? How do you use it?
Anytime that there's rice on the table, the kimchi jar comes out. And let's see, anytime I have got grilled foods, often if I have a salad and I just need a little perky pickle on the side, and again, like anywhere where you would put a pickle, so a hamburger or a brat, put some kimchi on there. A kimchi dog is something to be reckoned with.
Tell the people who don't know what kimchi is.
Well, kimchi is any number of vegetables that are pickled Korean style. So they're salted first, draw out some of their moisture, and then they're packed away traditionally in earthenware jars. Sometimes chili is added, sometimes not. Often there'll be grated Asian pear in them, and then traditionally they're buried in jars because that they didn't have refrigeration, and the lactic acid in the environment and on your hands, because really you're supposed to stir it by hand when you're making it, that begins to ferment, and it changes the cabbage into something not cabbage and skunky anymore, into this sort of sweet, delectable, crunchy, tart. It's like sauerkraut, but from Korea. And then you can add a lot of chili to it, and you get these really fiery ones that'll clean your nostrils out.
I love it. And why does it have probiotic qualities?
Well, there's just natural yeasts in the air, and then also on the vegetables themselves.
Right. And
then in Korean, there's a word for it called hand taste, because Chang Choi, who owns Choi's Kimchi, was telling me that every woman's kimchi every cook's kimchi is going to taste different, because when you're stirring it with your hands, you have your own little, I know that kind of sounds icky, but
your own flavoring. Yeah.
Your own little biome on you and in your kitchen. So your kimchi can be made with these same ingredients as the next door neighbor's, but hers is going to taste different. So, if you were homesick for your mom's Korean cooking, you'd really be hard up, because nothing tastes like her kimchi.
Like your mom's. Let me ask you this about the Portland dining situation, because you might have heard in the intro that I think it's clearly one of the great, restaurant cities in America. But I confess to you that I've never seen one episode of Portlandia, right? So, I'm literally coming at this as an innocent. What's going on in the Portland restaurant scene? What would you tell people kind of who don't know, if they came, what they should know, where they should go, what they would be eating?
It's It's not. It's great dining, but I would never call it fine dining. That just doesn't seem to stick here. So you might want to, you could bring a blazer, but people are going to look at you funny.
Right. You need the tattoo. You need the tattoo, not the blazer.
Right. It's just casual and funky, and we do our own thing, and we've written our own rules about how things ought to go. And there's a lot of fusion and a lot of there's just kind of dreamers. I mean, people, can start with a food cart and end up with a brick and mortar huge business. We're very much makers. We definitely don't watch our waistlines. We're not as health conscious, I would say, as LA. There's lots of salami, lots of guys with beards, tattoos.
Pretty funny.
It's hard to put a finger on, but I would say it's very, very casual and funky. And the service isn't always like top notch city, but the food is so good and it's so much cheaper than other places that it makes up for it. The funkiness makes it more fun. I'm
going to throw something else at you too, which I know that you can comment on, which is that I was fortunate to be invited out to the central coast of Oregon just like 6 months ago. It's like September, October of 2017. And
you couldn't call. It would kill you to call me.
Well,
okay.
you know what the deal was. We in truth we landed at PDX, and they picked us up because it was one of those journalism, one of those media tour things. They picked us up at PDX, and we got in the van at PDX. I never actually saw the city of Portland, so I did. The only thing I've seen of Portland for that trip was the airport, because they grabbed us and immediately drove. I assume southbound to the. To the wine country, to Willamette Valley, right? So, yeah. I'm super happy because within an hour of the time that I land, I'm drinking some, what I think is pretty extraordinary Pinot Noir and overlooking this beautiful, valley. And then they go, okay, next stop.
Yep.
And the next stop was great. And then let me put it to you this way. I spent... I'm thinking it's like 3 days down in that part of the world, and here's what really stood out to me: that I have the Pacific Ocean always in my kind of view. There are these beautiful mountains. I'm driving through the valley that's filled with kind of vineyards, and all of a sudden I'm thinking they're foraging for mushrooms. They're growing hazelnuts, the fruits and the vegetables like the berries, the blackberries, the raspberries that are coming up are extraordinary. The stuff coming in from the ocean, whether it be salmon or clams or oysters. I even ended up going to that, what's that salt place that you got there?
Jacobson Salt.
Yeah, I even ended up going to watch how the salt was kind of harvested. I was blown away. I can't imagine that there's a place in the United States of America where there is more local, beautiful fruit, vegetable, produce, seafood, even the meat, even the dairy. You're right over there. You pass through Tillamook, so there's cows, there's beef, there's ducks, there's cheese. I was blown away by the availability of fantastic ingredients. You got that going on.
Oh yeah, when I moved out here to go to culinary school, my grandparents had moved here and were living here, and I went to culinary school, and there were maybe like 3 fancy restaurants in Portland then, and I worked at 2 of them.
Oh, nice.
And then that was 25 years ago, and I could still afford the Pinot Noirs then. Mm. And it's exploded since then, and I can't even keep up with how many great restaurants. They're opening faster than I can keep up with it. I'm glad I don't do reviews anymore because I die. I get gout and die. It's just this constant churning of ideas, and I think, we're very close to all of that produce. We have an urban growth boundary that keeps Portland a certain size. We can't really sprawl much further out than that. We've got the ocean on one side, mountains and forest on the other. We got wild mushrooms, truffle hunting, albacore tuna,
right.
And then these world-class Pinot Noirs that 2 of them were just served, Domaine Seren and another one at the state dinner at the White House. That's kind of neither here nor there currently with the taste that's going on. However, it is a sign that we're proud enough to serve something to, French head of state. and know that wine's going to stand up well.
It's funny it's funny that you mentioned it, because I thought I wrote, when I wrote about it, I said something to the effect of, right now, based on what I was experiencing, I said it's nobody really is producing a better Pinot Noir in the world, and it raised some eyebrows because there is this place called Burgundy. But I was serious, you know what I mean? But I was serious in what I said. I was drinking. I happen to like Pinot Noir, but I was drinking wines that were just like blow away, and I think it's a combination not only of kind of like the, obviously the terroir, the soil, the origin of like but I think also that I think that Willamette, as an example, has reached that moment, 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 years into winemaking, where you're combining not only the kind of fabulous ingredients, but you're also providing it with a level of kind of expertise and professionalism. And I mean, some of those wines were just unbelievable.
Well, I think part of it too is it's Willamette, by the way.
Oh, sorry, yeah, thank
Willamette, you won't get there.
I hear you.
The cab won't know where to
Willamette.
go.
But it is okay. Willamette. Oh, that makes some sense. Yeah, sure.
Everything's said wrong here. It's Oregon.
Oh,
yeah, it's. I think part of the reason the wines are so special here is because they're still really small makers. They're starting to get snapped up by bigger California concerns, but there's still a lot of little boutique wineries that are doing tiny cases, like 100 cases or whatever.
Right.
And a friend of a friend says there's going to be a fire sale, and you show up and you buy, one of 100 cases that they made ever. It's still very much mud on the boots, Oregon. Yeah. And all the winemakers know each other and help each other out, which is really cool. It's starting to change quite a bit, but there's still some little finds. I just had one the other night. It was called the Color Collector. And our server talked us into it, and it was a Pinot Noir with some Gamay Noir in it. And I'm not a big Gamay fan; it's too fruity for me. But in this case, it had a nose of bitters, of Amaro and bitters.
Nice.
Which was off-putting at first, but then you tasted it, and it was this big, juicy, fruity wine. But it wasn't a crowd pleaser necessarily. It wasn't made for that. It was a conversation starter. And those wines are still easy to find here, and a lot of them are actually really inexpensive because they're new winemakers, and they're buying the grapes and they're doing tiny case, couple 100 cases. So it's still a really exciting place to drink wine. It's just a little more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah, well, then again, so is everything else. All right, now let us move into the collection. I thought you had written 7 books until I realized now that you're up to 8. So I want to try to cover off as many as possible. Explain to me, now again, I'm happy putting stuff on top of the stove. I will put it in the oven. I like braising my own food. I went, for a reason unbeknownst to me, other than that a friend super recommended it, I bought myself a year ago an air fryer, which in some ways sounds kind of funny and not in my nature, and yet I've been just killing it. I mean, I literally put.
What is it? I'm.
It's an oven. It's an oven that has kind of a convection element to it. It heats up to 400 degrees, and it holds an entire chicken. So if I take a whole chicken that I will buy at Costco, because I am a Costco hoe, and I season it with nothing more than some salt and pepper, and I maybe drop some garlic and lemon under the skin, and throw the rest of the lemon into the cavity with some garlic, and I put it into the air fryer at 400 degrees for 60 minutes. I flip it over at 30. That entire bird comes out as flawlessly as any that I've ever made or had. It's which is to say, crispy on all the skin and juicy on the meat, and redolent of the lemon and the garlic. It's just a beautiful contraption. But I only mentioned that because you've written an entire book on the Instant Pot, which I don't own and don't really know about, other than that I know it's a freaking phenomenon. What's going on with the Instant Pot?
Yeah, it's the crack of the kitchen these days.
I love that. Tell me about it.
It's an electric pressure cooker first and foremost.
Okay.
And so, the old adage about, people being afraid of their grandmother's pressure cooker because that one time the beets exploded and it was all over the ceiling. That's because it's on a stove. That's why people are afraid of it. But with an electric one, you don't really have to watch it. You kind of press a button and you walk out of the room. And the pressure, it stops cooking and the pressure comes down naturally, or you can force the pressure out of it. And so it cuts down the time of braises and soups and beans and stuff like that by anywhere from like half to 2/3 or a third of the time. It kind of depends on how much stuff you got in there.
Right.
But it does a phenomenal job with braises. So like, it's the best ribs I've ever made, seriously. But then again, it also is really good at beans. It's also a rice cooker. It has all these different settings on it, up to 10, I think is the most they have now. And some of them are just preset times, they don't magically know, but when something's done. But then, it's got a pressure cooker function and then a rice cooker, porridge if you're into congee in the morning. I know you're into that, Rob.
Yeah, I actually do. Actually, there's something I like that I've never made and probably never will.
Yeah, it's there if you need it.
Yeah, okay.
It's got a slow cook function as well, so you can opt to make your chili, over 9 hours instead of 30 minutes. So it's just kind of this fascinating machine that people are having a great deal of fun with. In my Italian book, I even figured out how to make cakes. It makes the best cheesecake in the whole wide world. I'm serious.
Really?
And I don't even know why. It's just the texture is intense and creamy and delicious.
What do you have to pay for? Like what's the how much does it cost to get an Instant Pot?
Well, actually, Sur La Table online is having a 55% off sale tomorrow, I guess. Wow. I just read that on Twitter, the Twitter machine. So it looks $80 for a Duo Plus. I mean, there's different models that have come out, and that has created some confusion, but I would recommend a 9-in-1, so it has 9 different cooking functions, and that's the Duo Plus Instant Pot. And then they have an Ultra, and then they have one that's Bluetooth controlled, but I have no idea how you would use that, or why you would use that. But anyway, so yeah, they're anywhere from they had them on sale right before Christmas on the Amazons, and I think they were like $50, $60 or something. And since you can get rid of your slow cooker and your rice cooker if you have one,
yeah,
it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, you do have to do
five
that.
of them now.
So, Instant Pot Italian is one book. Did you do a second Instant Pot book?
I just finished my second Instant Pot book, and that's going to be kind of a 6 ingredients or less sort of scheme there. Yeah, and that comes out this fall.
That's
September.
That's the 8th book. Okay, yeah, that's my go-to, 6 ingredients or less. But I'm looking at the Instant Pot Italian, and you get full farro with pears and walnuts, beans, Corona beans with tomato and sage, Tuscan beef stew, chicken with creamy artichoke sauce. Half the time of stovetop cookings, and so stovetop cooking. So yeah, that's an interesting play. It's I like it.
Yeah, well, the thing I'm madly in love with it. You can put dry pasta in there and a certain amount of water and other ingredients. For instance, my favorite one's penne, and then you put a big, thick ahi or albacore tuna steak and some cherry tomatoes and some broth in there. Turn it on for I think that one's 6 minutes, and it comes out perfectly. Well, perfectly cooked pasta.
That's unbelievable. Hey, on a slightly different subject, with 7 books, an 8th one coming, and all the articles you've written, have you ever estimated how many recipes you've kind of put out in public so far?
No, I haven't. I mean, I just realized that I've just written over 200 recipes for Instant Pot alone in the last year, which is kind of crazy.
Right, 200 a year. I'm saying you're good for 4,000 or 5,000 recipes. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and I stuff for magazines too, and that's 6 at a time. And then I'm also writing for Fitbit, so I don't know.
Make it 10,000. And by the way, Ivy, as a food professional, you obviously have to spend a lot of time in the kind of kitchen, testing, practicing, writing. I mean, is that? I'm assuming that's the case. Yes.
Yeah. I work from home. I got a laptop on the dining room table, and I kind of have an office with all my cookbooks in it, but I never use it really. And I'm in the kitchen almost all the time. I know the names of all of the grocery store clerks at my favorite grocery store.
Right.
And they know me. And I have an email list of people that come and pick up food because I just can't possibly keep up. And then I also have a corral of talented recipe testers that mostly I pay. Some of them do it for free because they just want Instant Pot recipes or whatever. But yeah, it's busy.
It's fantastic what you do, and it just is. I mean, it's fantastic and impressive.
See, right? You would think that I could make a cup of coffee. But no, I refuse to buy a machine, and I keep thinking I'm going to figure out French press, and I can't figure it out.
What do you do when you wake up? What do you do for coffee?
Oh, there's a Starbucks about.
Oh my God!
It's away.
That is okay. Fine. I'm so sorry to hear that. I am so sorry to hear that. Because I think you know what it means. It means that coffee is not that important to you at the end of the day.
No, I'm kind of new to the whole thing.
Okay.
Honest.
All right, now look. If I look in the time that we have, because I see where we're at, I see the easy soups and the quick breads.
Right.
I got your weeknight vegetarian.
Right.
Then you have the Better from Scratch cookbook. So you're doing everything from like granola and beef jerky to graham crackers and kimchi, which we talked about. I want to tell you something. You have your crackers and dips book, and I actually, before we got on together here, I watched a video of you on YouTube making crackers, which was fascinating to me for two reasons. Number one, because I've never seen anybody make crackers, and number two, because you're so great and so natural and so good at doing that on camera. It's not easy.
Thank you.
The farm to table movement, and you did a farm to table cookbook, which is good. And then, of course, you have the having married a vegetarian, you did the adaptable feast, so that you can kind of segue from meat to non-meat dishes, and contributed another 25 recipes to the Oregonian cookbook. Which of those would you, Ivy Manning, like to discuss in further detail?
I really love the soup and bread one. It's quick soups from scratch with easy soups from scratch with quick breads to match.
Yes.
I don't like soup unless there's some bread with it.
Okay.
So I came up with 75 recipes for really fast soups, and then a little bread to go with each one. So that's all over the world. Recipes from everywhere from, I don't know. There's a Ethiopian soup with red lentil soup with injera, to pozole with tortillas, but everything's really fast. So it's all super streamlined, and lots of little hacks and stuff in there to make stuff faster and cozier. Coming from rainy Oregon, we know a thing or two about soup.
Yes, you do. What, Ivy? What are you having for dinner tonight? Do you know?
Well, it is, I think I got up to 80 here today, which is odd for this time of year here, but it is beautifully sunny outdoors. Mm-hmm. And we were thinking about walking up a couple blocks to a local sushi joint that we love called Zilla, as in Godzilla. Mm-hmm. And they have, Kate will be working tonight. She's from Hawaii. And she makes really excellent, we just say omakase, right. And she makes us whatever's the freshest things right in front of us. And then we pay a little bit extra, and she does fresh, local wasabi, graded to order.
That's worth having. I'm a fan of that. I think people don't, again, it's another one of those things that people kind of don't know until you know, and then you go, oh, wait a second, that's good.
Yeah, it's a big difference. It's not as nostril clearing. It's sharper and fresher tasting, and there aren't many places in the world that can grow good wasabi, but there's a guy on the coast here in Oregon, and it really almost has to be stream-fed, cool streams feed wow. the roots. And so it's incredibly fresh. Either that or we'll go to a place called St. Jack, a friend of mine owns. It's a funky little French place. It's like a Lyonnaise bistro, but he's extremely creative. So he'll have duck confit on the menu. He does a stuffed duck neck with the beak that's really delicious. He's very creative. If you've ever been to Joe Beef in Montreal, it's similar to that, in that it's roots in French, so like the Marchand de Vin sauce will be perfect, but it'll just have some crazy-ass side dish that you never would have thought of, and all very local cuisine. And halibut just came in season here, so we know there'll be incredible halibut specials
If
tonight.
you were going to be making halibut, how would you make it?
Well, I call it the country club special. My husband likes it just seared, so I heat up a pan until it's hell hot.
Mm-hmm.
I sear it on one side, turn it over, and put it in like a 450-degree oven to finish it.
Right.
And inevitably forget to use a oven mitt, getting it out of the oven.
Oh, I hate that.
And then maybe deglaze it, like throw some capers into the pan and get them crispy with a little bit of brown butter and some lemon, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Something
Perfect.
like that.
Simple.
Something real simple.
What do you keep kind of like what's important for you to keep in your fridge or in your pantry ingredient wise?
Ooh, I love that question. If I answer it, will you answer back?
Yes.
I have to have Osawa naturally fermented soy sauce in my fridge at all times.
Okay.
Red Boat fish sauce.
Okay.
At all times. Said Choi's kimchi, the Napa kimchi with chilies at all times, and usually a big block of Parmesan that's never seen a piece of plastic in its life. I love Costco, I agree, but I don't like buying my Parmesan cheese from there because it's been sort of cryovac in plastic.
Right.
For God knows how long. So I go to a cheese shop here and have it hand cut, and it's never seen plastic. Because I'm persnickety that way. You know me, Rob.
I do, and you are.
How about you? What's your desert island items in your fridge? Saying you had a fridge.
I'm going to tell you they've given me 20 seconds, but so I'm going to have to narrow it to one, even though there's going to be capers and all that kind of stuff. There's a hot sauce, and I'm not a hot sauce guy, but there's a hot sauce called Lingham's. And what's lovely about Lingham's, which they've been making for 100 years, is that it's both hot and sweet. And because they've given me 10 seconds, Ivy Manning, I want to thank you. And I want to tell people if they want to find you, you're on Instagram at Ivy_Manning. But they could also find you on your website, ivymanning.com. And you should do that, people. I will be back next week with another guest, the fabulous Veronica Chambers, who has contributed to about 30 books, including 5 New York Times bestsellers. And I will close by thanking Ivy and saying to everybody to remember that we'll be back next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and that'll be 8 o'clock on the Eastern Time for All You Can Eat. It'll be episode number 11. And remember that life is short, so never waste a meal.